Nikola Jokic reportedly will not play for Team Serbia in World Cup. We'll talk about that. Plus, can KCP expand his game a little bit to make up for the loss of Bruce Brown, and why it's important for the Nuggets to finally find some stable version of Jokic Independence this season? All that and more on Locked On Nuggets.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast, part of the Locked On Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us and making this part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us on a Monday, recording this late Sunday night as I get set to head out of town. Appreciate you guys being part of the show and joining us this week. Hope you guys enjoyed guest week. It was a lot of fun for me. We'll probably do some more when I get back from vacation. This is my last solo show for the week. Adam Mares will be with you on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I'll be back with you guys for a joint show on Friday this week. And then we switch to 3 shows a week next week for the off season, the real depths of the off season. Well, I'll let you know that today's show is brought to you by PrizePicks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. That's PrizePicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. I want to thank you guys for being with us and being an everydayer. If you guys are one of those that listen to us each and every day, appreciate all of you guys and making us your first listen. We are available on all platforms, whether on YouTube, Spotify. A lot of folks check us out on Pocket Casts. I noticed that when I was going through stuff. Or if you're joining the live show, where you can join folks like Freddie hanging out with us, J-Trap. Para Pereira says, thank God Adam Mares is back. Not so fast, my friend. You're stuck with me for another day. How you like them apples? Okay, on today's show, we're going to talk about Nikola Jokic, set to miss World Cup per reports out of Mozart Sport. We'll talk about that, as well as I want to get a little bit about KCP and whether or not he can kind of expand a little bit this season to cover a little bit more for Bruce Brown, because we haven't really talked about what KCP can do to fill the hole that is created by Bruce Brown's departure in free agency. We'll talk about that. We'll also talk about why I think this is the season where the Nuggets have got to figure out some way to live a little bit independent of Nikola Jokic, and that'll kind of tie back into everything. We start with a report out of Mozart Sport today. I don't know if that's the exact pronunciation of the publication. It certainly looks like Mozart Sport. Nikola Jokic will sit out of the upcoming FIBA World Cup. He's chosen to rest after the Nuggets run to winning the NBA Finals. He has informed Coach Pecic that he will not be playing for Team Serbia. Micic from the Oklahoma City Thunder also out, as well as Kalinic, who plays for Barcelona. So I am not going to have a lot of takes on this. And the reason in part is I don't want death threats from our friends in Serbia, but also because it's not really any of my business. And I'm never going to be able to understand it as an American, where there's 2 things concurrently happening. One, we have been historically dominant in the sport. Like, we have dominated the Olympics and World Cup competitions. We've had some falters, and I think this will be another one. I honestly don't like the Team USA's chances this season, but we've kind of dominated to the point where we take it a little bit for granted. So it's hard for me to kind of contextualize success and what it means for Serbians and for the Serbian fans of their Team Serbia. The other thing is that it's a loaded issue with a lot of emotions behind it. I completely understand the disappointment that Serbian fans are going to have. I'm not going to sit here and be like, come on, guys, he just got done with a deep playoff run through June. He's played a ton of games in the last 4 years. He's exhausted. He's got a daughter. He needs some time. I get it. I totally understand the disappointment and frustration with him not being able to play for his country especially after last summer's performance in that game versus Greece and everything. I totally understand the frustration there. I'm not even gonna say that it's not warranted. I understand it. It's a matter of priorities, and sometimes you got to do what's best for you. But I think also the other thing here is, if you're a fan of Jokic as the greatest Serbian basketball player of all time, then you have to impart I think want what's best for him long term, and to understand how much Jokic typically tends to do whatever is asked of him. He just doesn't. He doesn't miss games. He doesn't sit out. He doesn't skip team functions to go party and wherever. Right? Like he's always been pretty much a team first guy, and he seems pretty committed to the responsibilities on his shoulders. And so if he feels like he genuinely cannot be a part of Team Serbia for whatever reason, exhaustion, mental or otherwise, then it's probably for the best. At least from the perspective of trusting Nikola and his ability to understand where he's at. What I will talk a little bit more about, though, is the ramifications for the Nuggets. This is a good thing for Denver. Jamal's going to play for Team Canada. I think honestly this could help Jamal because he might be in a little bit better condition. Like I think as long it's one of those things where it's like it's a really good idea as long as he doesn't get hurt. And if he gets hurt, it was an absolutely terrible idea. What was anyone thinking letting him do this? But as long as he doesn't get hurt, which I don't know, like I have no idea of how to estimate those chances, and I have to think that if there was a significant chance of him being injured, if there was real concern from the training staff, both of the Nuggets and Team Canada and his own doctors, that he wouldn't do it. It'll be fine. But for Nikola, it's probably really vital for him to get as much rest as possible. He was, there were times when he was pretty burned out last year, even when he was putting up absolutely dominant performances. Like it just was clear that he was at the end of his mental exhaustion rope. And so having more time in quiet is probably what's best for him mentally. A lot of this is you getting through the grind of the grind of the NBA season is mentally taxing on a lot of guys. I think it was taxing on Nikola last year, and I think that it's probably going to do him some good to get an extra 2 months of basketball, because that's a lot of this is when I started to realize the training camp started the last week of July, and then the tournament all the way through August and into September. And then they've got last week of September is when players have to report for training camp. And you're doing training camp and then you're immediately into preseason. It's like, geez, like that turnaround is nuts. They need to probably change this and switch it up to where FIBA's a little bit earlier. Like having this thing in August is just not, I don't think it's a good idea. I personally think that they should be moving this stuff up into a little bit earlier especially if they want more NBA participation. So getting Nikola a few more weeks of rest is probably what's best. Now, I still don't know if he's going to be around for training camp. Like I genuinely would not be surprised if Nikola missed all of training camp and came back for the start of the season. If it was like he got into town, like joined the team midway through preseason, there's just not a lot of requirement for him. Most of the players on roster know how to play with him. You're not trying to integrate chemistry the way that you were last year. He'll probably show just because that's what he tends to do. He tends to take his job pretty seriously, but I wouldn't be surprised if Nikola was a bit later to camp. And then from there, I think there is a question of how much Nikola needs to play in general this year. As long as the Nuggets can secure a top 3 seed, that's really the goal here. It's like you want to get to 48 plus wins and you can probably secure a top 3 seed. That might be harder. It's possible that there's going to be a 56, a 55, and a 52, and you may have to get to 53 wins in order to secure a 3 seed. But in general, I think it's better for Nikola to rest because he put a lot on himself since the bubble. It was bubble, no off season, 66 games, 2-round playoff run, short off season, 2022 season, 82 games, 1-round playoff run, FIBA competition with Team Serbia, straight into training camp, played in all the games this season. It was still up there at 60 plus games, played until June. Like that's an incredible amount of basketball that Nikola Jokic has played over the last 4 years. It's an absurd amount that he has played. So, but in general, he's proven he's always been kind of, how can I put this? Knock on wood, he's seemed invincible. Like he is one of the most durable players I've ever seen. I can't believe how little time he seems to miss with significant injury and how available he is for pretty much whenever the team is needed. Per Jamal here, Nino says Melo had the best season of his career after the 2008 Olympics. Hopefully it'll have the same effect on Jamal. Rubayat 300 says, I do too, though I think Melo's thing was learning team ball and not being the best player and accepting that. Murray's ahead in development on that front. That's kind of accurate. one of the reasons that Melo had one of his best years after the 2008 Olympics was not only the Melo thing, the Olympics Melo thing, but also the Nuggets put a roster around him where Chauncey was the most important Denver Nugget that season. Sorry, but it's true. So that I think is something to consider. Matthew says, just came in here to say I'm happy Nikola's sitting out FIBA World Cup. Feel free to play in the Olympics, though, if Serbia makes it. I think it's okay for Nuggets. Like, this is going to be a point of disagreement. Like, Serbia fans are not going to be happy for him. And Nuggets fans, if you're a U.S. Nuggets fan, you're probably going to be pretty happy with this outcome because it's better for you personally. But it's important to understand it's a bummer. It just sucks that there's not enough like energy and time for this to kind of work out to go around. The NBA is never going to stop play or postpone season or shorten season for FIBA. It'd be great if they did. It would make those competitions even better, but they're never going to do that because cha-ching, money. So that's kind of where that's at. If the reports are wrong and Nikola does decide to play with Team Serbia, which is of course possible if he changes his mind or whatever, we'll cover it here on Locked On Nuggets. On the other side, I want to talk about KCP and how I think he might be able to fill some of the gap for replacing what the Nuggets lose with Bruce Brown. We'll do that on the other side. But first, I need to tell you about PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. Daily fantasy can be really intimidating with having to play. You have to know so many numbers and so many guys, and you're playing against all of these other players that have models and projections, and they spend so much time doing this. Some of them are professional players. You're not doing that on PrizePicks. You're just playing. It's just you versus the projections. You pick 2 to 6 players, and if they'll score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, and you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. They offer projections on any sport that you watch. MLB going right now, but they've also got NBA, NFL, NHL, PGA, college football coming up soon, men's college basketball and women's college basketball, soccer, WNBA, esports, NASCAR, tennis, MMA, boxing, disc golf, Eurobasket, cricket, and more. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's just that easy. They offer safe and fast withdrawals, and they're currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. Download the PrizePicks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, they're going to match it with $100. No matter what you put in under $100, they'll match you with that amount. Don't forget to enter promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. We'll be right back on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets. Thanks for joining us and making this part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us on a Monday. Adam Mares returns tomorrow. Woo! I'm gone for the rest of the week, so if you're sick of hearing me, I'll tell you, I'm sick of doing solo pods, then you're in luck because Adam will be around the rest of the week. We'll do a combo show on Friday. I would love to know, by the way, as a programming note, I need 2 things from you. One, I need you to go to YouTube if you have not. Click like and subscribe. Best way to support the show. Take a second, hit the like button, hit subscribe, turn on notifications. If you're listening to this on a podcast and if you're driving, keep driving. But when you get there, do me a favor before you go into work, just open up the phone, open up that YouTube app. I know you got it on there. I know you were watching Nikola Jokic highlights when you're supposed to be in that meeting. I know it. And hit the like and subscribe button for me. 2, I'd love to know what guests you want because I want to do more guest interviews. I just think it's good for the show and good to get other voices here on the program, whether that's Nuggets people, whether that's other people in the media that you would love to get on the show. If it's people from national perspectives, whatever it is, let me know. And we'll try and make that happen because during the slow times of the offseason, I think I'm going to try and do my solo day that we'll be doing. I'm probably going to make it into a guest appearance. So let me know who you want to see on Locked On Nuggets for guest day as opposed to guest week as it was last week. All right. I want to talk a little bit about KCP and what I think he can bring to the table this season. So KCP, I thought, had a really good season, obviously, winning the championship and shot great from 3 and all these types of things. Had a rough final, same as MPJ, but he kind of settled down as the finals went on, had some big shots and some big moments. I think that there's probably, when we talk about the Bruce Brown loss, one of the things that we probably overlook is the capacity for KCP to absorb some of that. There's a cost with that because it means more minutes for a veteran. And it means more of a usage load for a veteran, and those things are tough. But KCP, I thought, showed last season It's not that I didn't think he had an off the bounce game. He's totally fine. Like he can dribble and make plays to a very like simple veteran degree. He's not like a dynamic pick and roll point guard. He's not a, dynamic 3-level scorer, but he's competent. And he really had some really good possessions, especially working with Nikola for that handoff sequence that got him so many of those pull-up jumpers around the free throw line. I thought that was a really good and consistent action that they got good, clean looks out of. The KCP hit at a high percentage. There's probably a little bit more that KCP can add if he were to stagger with the bench unit. Now, Jamal, ultimately, all of those stagger bench units worked out great when it was Jamal and AG at the 5. So they lost a lot of those games, but they didn't lose them as much or as often or by as much as they did in the regular season. But if they're just trying to replace what Bruce Brown brought to the table, I think KCP can bring the ball up the floor, which is step number 1. I think KCP can be more of an initiator in terms of being maybe a secondary playmaker next to Jamal if they need to run him out there in those second units. I actually kind of wonder if one thing that they might want to do this upcoming season, it's unlikely this happens because Nikola has a preference, and his preference is to play long stretches. He wants to start a game until the 3-minute mark of the first. He wants to sit until the 8-minute mark, and he wants to play out the remainder. So that's like his preferred kind of approach in terms of minutes. Less if he can get to it. If you can get to the 4-minute mark, great. That's 8 minutes first quarter, 8 minutes second quarter. That's 32 minutes when you replicate that across the second half, and that's about where you want him to be at. But I do think that with the loss of Bruce Brown, one thing that they would benefit from is running the starters, sub out Aaron, put in Peyton Watson or whoever it is that you want to put into that replacement slot, play the rest of the quarter with Jamal, KCP, MPJ, and 2 subs, and be able to play that unit until the end of the first quarter. Bring Nikola back, have him play the first 4 minutes, rest 3 minutes, finish out the last 5. It would balance out a lot of things. It would get the kids minutes with Nikola Jokic. It's going to make those second units a lot better. That's actually an adjustment I could see working, because I do think that Jamal and KCP can work pretty well in a bench lineup, even if you put in some of the younger guys. And whether that's Vlatko or Zeke, Vleek now apparently is what I'm going to be calling them. Whether it's those guys or some of the kids, as you can call them, the rookies, the young players. I think those lineups can work a little bit more. Nino says we need KCP to be fresh for the playoffs. So this is one of the things that I think that is going to be a challenge this season is you need to be fresh for the playoffs. Again, I'm going to tell you, if you're not a top 3 seed, you don't win the title. You need to be a top 3 seed. You cannot be facing it's not just home court. It's the level of competition that you're facing. Usually it's the quality of teams that you're up against. So because they chose to go this route, it's hard for me to see anybody coming in and just absolutely popping at an incredibly high level. Like I have a hard time kind of like locating a player in the depth unit that can absolutely have like a real massive jump in production, just production, not even impact, just production. I think Vlatko is an impact player. I don't think he's a production guy. And that's going to be an issue here is you do need guys to get rebounds and points. You can be a guy that helps you. And like, I always lean towards the impact players, but you do need guys that are going to get rebounds, points, and assists, blocks, steals. Like you need box score production to get through these minutes. And I don't know where that's going to come from. Like, I do not know who on the bench is going to be able to provide that box score production. Asking Peyton Watson to do it consistently, I think, is a lot to ask. And what that means is, in the absence of that, and before as I mentioned 100 times, I think that they're different by the trade deadline. In the absence of that, that means the starters are going to have to step up and fill some of that void. And that's where I think KCP can probably add a little bit more. KCP's usage load also is pretty low, right? Like he doesn't have to, he sometimes has a very high usage rate in terms of who he has to guard. Finals were exhausting for him. He had tough matchups there and versus the Suns. But in general, I think KCP can probably give them a little bit more. And you're right that you have to balance it, but it's going to be, I think, a real challenge as they try and get through the rotation. Joseph says, any way to get to pick up some free agents, or maybe Reggie Jackson steps up? I mean, certainly. Like, maybe Reggie just looks way better with a full training camp. Like, maybe it just takes him, maybe he has like a real light bulb moment and it clicks for him in terms of how to play with Nikola. And he comes in with a much different approach and plays great this year because he was really good for the Clippers. Like, they liked him. They liked him and the fans liked him. He was really good there. Maybe that's absolutely, and that would help a lot if Reggie Jackson can fill that void the way that he's kind of being paid to. I'm a little skeptical, and it's not that I think Reggie Jackson is bad. I just think the fit's bad. And so until I see it change, I'm going to hold kind of that pre-established position. And so even then, Reggie has to take the place in large part of the non-Jamal minutes. And Bruce occupied both the non-Jamal minutes at point guard, but he also played next to Jamal with the starters, subbing for KCP. So you kind of have to there's multiple roles that Bruce absorbed that you have to find replacement parts for. And that's going to be a challenge. Christian Brown can do some of that. That's been one of the talking points. I think a lot of the backup 2 stuff Christian can do, but the backup 1 stuff is where I kind of wonder, maybe you can get away with KCP taking not a huge chunk of it, but filling in a little bit more of that consideration, just a little bit, as far as replacing some of that work. The Atlas says we should get Christian Wood. No. I defended the Christian Wood signing by the Mavericks. That could have been really good if Jason Kidd hadn't completely screwed it up from the very get-go. There's a reason that Christian Wood is no longer with the Mavericks. There's a reason that he's no longer with the Rockets. There's a reason he's no longer with the Pistons. And the things that made him not a long-term solution for those players are specifically things that especially you cannot do with the Denver Nuggets. Christian Wood would not play. He flat out would not play. He would not get minutes on this team. Michael Malone would, in my opinion, probably bury him deeper than he did Thomas Bryant and JaVale. So that's a tough one, I think, to kind of consider. On the other side, I want to talk about how important it is for the Nuggets to find what I'm referring to now as Jokic Independence. We'll talk about that when we return on Locked On Nuggets. Back here on Locked On Nuggets, thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us on a Monday. Last show for me for the week until Friday, that is. Adam Mars is with you Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So make sure to send Adam suggestions on Twitter of what you want to see. I'm going to still call it Twitter until the end of time. I'm just going to call it Twitter. Make sure to hit him up and let him know what you would like him to talk about, because without me around, he's going to have a hard time coming up with ideas. I'm the ideas guy on this show. He says all his good ideas for DNVR, which you should check out, by the way. Make sure to check out Daily Nuggets content over at DNVR. Okay. So it's no secret that the Nuggets have sucked without Nikola, and it's been a recurring pattern. There was actually something interesting that I thought of the other day. I'm just doing, every day I'm taking a team and kind of going through and doing research, watching clips, doing film. I did the Pelicans and the Pacers today. And when I was doing the Warriors the other day, one of the things that I happened on was I looked at, since 2016, what's been the off-court net rating for the Warriors when Steph Curry is not on the floor? What's the off-court Steph Curry minutes? What do those look like? And in 2015, they were great. That bench unit was amazing. It was Sean Livingston, Andre Iguodala, Leandro Barbosa. It was awesome. 2016, as you would imagine, for a team that won 73 games, it was also absolutely awesome. And they were really good in all of those minutes. And so it was not a problem at all when Curry sat. It was just, they won those minutes, which is very hard to do. It's very hard to win the minutes when your best player is not on the court. It's what's really kind of funny about the Jokic situation is it's not unique. It's just stark in that how severe it is. In 2015, the Warriors were minus 3.5 when Curry was not on the floor. So they were not good in that season. In 2016, the Warriors in the regular season were minus 5.4. That's actually kind of like wins. Like they actually like won. And in the playoffs, they actually won in those minutes as well, by the way. So we're looking at like minus 3.5, minus 5.4. Okay, that's not that bad. -2 in 2017 because they had Kevin Durant. That's pretty good, right? Like -2 is really pretty elite. And they won him again in 2018 because, again, when you have Kevin Durant, you're able to survive those things. That's the luxury that he affords. Then 2019 comes and it drops back down to to -4.3. He sets out the next 2 seasons. Essentially, plays very minimally the next 2 seasons. And then we get into 2022, and last year it was -1.4. So they kind of got back to where it was pretty decent. And the problem that you kind of see happening here is that these minutes have been bad, but not awful. The Nuggets are going to have to find a way for them to be able to actually have an identity without Nikola, because that's been a recurrent and severe issue for them time and time again. Is not just that they absolutely blow leads, that they can't. They'll be up 10 and Nikola comes back with it being a 2-point game or a 5-point deficit or a 10-point deficit. They don't have an identity. And we talked about this all last year. And to be honest with you, in the playoffs, I don't necessarily think that they had an identity either, other than Bruce Brown, fullback dive, and Aaron at the 5 playing switchable lineups. That was like the closest thing that they got to a complete identity as far as like the bench unit, the non-Jokic minutes. It's hard, I think, when so many of the players are added to this team because they can play with Nikola. If you can't play with Nikola, you don't really have a role on this team. There's not really a purpose for you to be there unless you're DeAndre Jordan. Like DeAndre is the lone exception. They do not have an identity. And it's why I think a lot of fans have clamored for them to find a backup center that's at least some level of replacement. And I would tend to agree. Like, I genuinely think that getting Kelly Olynyk I cannot really put into, I would upgrade the Nuggets something along the lines of like a point on my power rating if they were to add Kelly Olynyk. And to let you know, like, I would never add almost any bench player as worth a point, but it would be such a massive thing for them to be able to add a replacement Jokic option to that second unit. They could just be like, yeah, he's going to run out of the pinch post and they're going to run high-low and they're going to be able to run dribble handoffs. That simple addition would dramatically change the second unit. They're going to have to establish that this season. And to be honest, I still don't really know what that looks like, because Jamal doesn't even run that much pick and roll with the second unit. It's primarily just like ISO. And your identity can't be Jamal does some stuff. That's what it was for most of last year. It was just Jamal some stuff. The good run when it was Vlatko and Zeke was switch all, great defense, get out and run. But some of those lineups were also buffeted by Bruce Brown. Okay. And like his defense. I don't know if they have the defensive personnel to do that this season. Like Peyton, I think, can be an incredible defender, and Christian Brown's a really good defender. So in theory, you do have like a 2-3 combo that can be really good with Vlatko and Zeke. Again, I'm just kind of calling Vleek next to Jamal, and that can probably work. But they're going to need to actually learn some semblance of identity. They need the bench unit to know what it is. That's even harder, I think, when you got young guys, because we don't know what these guys are going to be in the NBA. Is Julian Strother a 3-level player that can actually do more with the ball in his hands than we thought? Is he a pure 3-and-D player? Is Jalen Pickett a floor general point guard? Is Colin Gillespie like a floor general Monte Morris, or is he more of a pure like shooter, off-ball shooter, secondary playmaker, Lonzo Ball type of guy? Is Hunter Tyson? What is he, right, in the NBA? We all don't have these things. So when guys don't have an identity, it's even harder to have, I think, an identity for the bench unit. And that gets back into Reggie, I think, as well, which is, I think it's difficult to ask Reggie Jackson to run that second unit when there's so few kind of identifiers of what they're going to be. And so ultimately, I think that there's going to be some sort of like, and I don't know what it is. Like, I don't have a suggestion. That's why I'm not an NBA coach or in the front office or training staff or anything else. I have no idea. But I do think that they're going to need to find some sort of identity in order to get them through the regular season, or at least to try and minimize the damage that those second units can do. Even if, I'll say this, they could be as bad as last year and it'd be fine, but you would rather them not be as bad as last year. A lot of the conversation is, well, those bench units were so bad last year, they can't be worse. And you're right. But ideally, you just wouldn't be as bad. Like, ideally, still, it would be like a little bit better. And that's what I think is interesting is, can this unit that on paper is so much worse actually be better? And having an identity, I think, would go a long way. J-Trap says, Matt, do you think it's due to the fact of them not having a traditional big, the contrast and play style becomes so different? That's exactly what I think. I think it's not only, I don't think you can have like a Thomas Bryant. I don't think you can have a Christian Wood. I don't think you can have a JaVale McGee. I think you actually need a player that in some capacity looks a little bit more like Nikola. They are not going to be Nikola. No one is. But like Kelly Olynyk is like the D version of Nikola Jokic, which that's actually a real compliment to Kelly, because Olynyk KO is a, like, in my opinion, a B+, A- backup center in this league. I don't know why teams aren't throwing money and picks at the Jazz to get him out. I would be throwing stuff at KO, at the Jazz to get KO. I would be doing whatever necessary. Like, the Raptors sent a first-round pick for Jakob Poeltl. I would much rather have KO than Jakob Poeltl, and I love Jakob Poeltl. So that's kind of where that identity kind of gets here. All right. Got a lot of suggestions in the chat segment for guests. I'm going to keep those under consideration. You guys had some really good ideas. I will bring some of those on. Appreciate it for those suggestions. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe button over on YouTube. Make sure, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, give us a 5-star review. Have yourselves a great week. Enjoy having Adam Mares back in your lives. I will see you guys again on Friday for a team up episode with Adam Mares, provided his schedule accommodates. Have yourselves a great week. We'll see you guys again next time on Locked On Nuggets.